I'm Anil Kumar, and here is a quick note on discrete and continuous random variables. We have explained random variables at length in different videos, and here is how we can summarize it. What are random variables? These are the variables which are defined from outcome of experiments, right? Outcome of random experiments, right? So these are these variables, and they are associated with random experiments. Okay, so they are related with random experiments. Now what do? We actually define some relation from the outcomes of the experiment, and we have seen that these outcomes of the experiment could be sometimes countable, right? Sometimes we could count them. So these outcomes are countable, or these outcomes are measurable. Countable, when I say, it is like when you toss a count. If you toss a coin, in that case you can count how many heads are there, how many times do you get heads or tails, right? Or when you roll a die, for that matter, two die, you can count the number of times one event happens. So those are countable type of experiments. On the other hand, if you're working with the height, let's say distance, time, such parameters, then we are trying to measure them. Do you see that? So these are two different types of experiments and do different types of outcomes. So we see that random experiment may have countable outcomes or measurable outcomes. Now in case they have countable outcomes, then this leads to the random variables which we call discrete random variables. So this leads to discrete and in case we are analyzing the outcomes of an experiment where things are being measured, in that case we are dealing with continuous random variables. I hope this distinction is very clear. So whenever we are working with discrete random variables, we are working with real numbers, whole numbers. So in this case, we are actually working with real whole numbers. And in this case, we are actually measuring. So the numbers are within an interval. So here we are working with numerical values. Within an interval. Is that okay? So that is how the random variables could be slightly different, right? So when we have random variables, for example, if I roll a die, then I could get a number between 1 to 6, right? So that could be the variable we are interested in. And in case we are measuring the height, in that case we may be interested in finding the height of persons whose height is between an intervals, right? So in that case we say we are interested in a value which is in between two values, right? Let's say we have 1.2 and let's say 1.29, for example, right? So it could be kind of like this. So values between these two, for example, right? So it all depends what type of intervals we create. We may include one side, we may not include the other side, something like that. So anyway, so the idea here is that whenever you're talking about continuous random variables, in that case, we are talking about an interval. And whenever we're talking about a discrete random variable, then in that case, we're talking about a value. Now, interesting thing here is that if I'm working on a continuous random variable, and if I say what is the probability of the variable being a number, let's say 1 meters, right? For example, measuring height, then the answer will always be 0, because there cannot be any probability associated with a unique number. We are always talking about intervals. Do you understand? So that is kind of very important to understand as we move on. I'm Anil Kumar, and I hope this short note gives you an idea of what type of random variables we can work with, and why are they countable, why are they regarded as a discrete random variables or continuous random variables. Thank you, and all the best.